Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. Coming up on today's show, Ian Anderson is back. Jesse Bates doesn't do anything for me. And last but not least, and for the culture, Reggie Chatman is on the hot seat. I'll explain. It's ATL Day Ones. Let's go.
This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
I want to start by saying thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. Remember, we're free and available wherever you download your podcast. And wherever you download your podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that from you in advance. Today's episode of ATL Day Ones is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more and visit FanDuel.com/locked on to start today. And as you can see, there's no Tenitra today. She will be back. She got a couple of days off this week and getting some rest as much needed. And for filling in for her, it is my main man, Reggie Chatman from 11 Alive. Reggie, what's going on, man? Thank you for hopping on with us today.
Man, I'm excited to be here. You know, I've been able to be on the show a couple of times. I figured I'd come out here for a couple of days filling for Tenitra, just kind of hold it down for a little bit. You know what I mean? And the weather's been fantastic in Atlanta. We're just living life. All is well in the city, baby.
All is well in the city. As you well know, the Braves are getting spring training rolling off, and there's been several stories that everybody's been talking about, you know, from whether it be Von Grissom, you know, filling in for Dansby, whether he's going to be able to do that, and also whether or not Ronald Acuna and Ozzie Albies, those guys going to be able to come back and do their thing, and coming off of some injuries, dealing with the injuries and everything. But I think the one thing that I wanted to kind of talk about today is the fact that there's going to be a competition at that fifth starter in the rotation, right? We're talking about Mike Soroka, who's coming off of multiple Achilles tear injuries, and we got Ian Anderson coming off a down year after he got sent down to AAA last year, and he also ended the season with an oblique injury. So I think that's the one thing that I'm kind of interested in, because I feel like Von Grissom is going to be able to do his thing. We'll probably talk about that a little bit more in depth tomorrow. But I think the main thing today is, for you, do you feel like is this a real competition between Michael Soroka and Michael Soroka and Ian Anderson? Do you feel like they're going to be the guy to eventually come out on top of this?
Well, I think personally, to start the year, I think I would have to go with Ian Anderson. I'm a big Ian Anderson guy, right? We've, of course, seen him in more recent spots really come up in a big way. Of course, he's still young. He's learned a lot over his first couple of years of career. I mean, he's pitching in World Series and showing out in a big way. I mean, it just wasn't until this last season where it seemed like he had a little bit of a problem with some of his command and wasn't as dominant as he kind of was the 2 years prior. We talked with Grant McCauley, our Braves insider, and he told us that out at spring training in Northport, he has been working on a third pitch, right? He, of course, has had his fastball and his changeup, which has been so devastating. But last year, he turned really into what was really a big-time two-pitch type of guy. He's been working on a slider that I would hope, after having some chance to really test it out in the minors and have the whole offseason, it seems like he's really gotten back to work to really see if he can kind of get back to the top. If I had an early pick right now, I'd probably go Ian Anderson in that 5 spot, just because he's been pitching more recently, naturally. I mean, if you're Mike Soroka, you want to make sure you kind of get him back to where he was, but over time. I don't think having him in that position to instantly be the 5th starter would be a good decision, just because you want to give him some chance to be able to get himself together. Make sure that he has a chance to really get his confidence back up playing in the bigs. And once he's finally able to go, you could see him move back in that 5 spot based on how Ian Anderson kind of pitches. But if you're going just opening day roster, how it kind of rolls from there, you probably go Ian in that 5 spot. Maybe have Michael, coming off and just kind of pitching out of the bullpen until he gets himself enough confidence to be able to come back and really be a full-time starter and hopefully get to the level that we had seen him in his first couple of years in the bigs.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk about being a runner-up for Rookie of the Year and also making an all-star team. So those are some of the things that you have to really take a look at and take in consideration. But, Michael Soroka has been dealing with a little hamstring tightness. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But like, I'm with you, though, man. It has to be Ian Anderson, right? Because you're talking about a guy who in 2020 and 2021, he won 7 of 8 starts in the postseason. And also, he was set to be the Game 7 starter, and Brian Snitker had no issues with that, in that World Series year in 2021. But of course, Max Fried shut it down and did what he was supposed to do. So when you talk about that type of confidence that they had in him, it's hard for me to see Michael Soroka overcoming that at this juncture, right? Because like you said, you're dealing with a little hamstring tightness. Now they said it was precautionary, but I think Ian Anderson has to have the upper hand in that said competition. Now, over the weekend, Reggie, let's talk a little All-Star, because this is something that just kind of touched me a little bit, because I start, a lot of times in the morning I get up early and I start looking at videos, and I came across a video of Magic Johnson, when back in 1992 when he came back with the HIV, and a lot of players were a little skeptical about playing against him or on his team and everything like that. Karl Malone was one of those guys who was very upfront about that.
Karl Malone.
Exactly. That's how you're supposed to feel about Karl Malone.
Okay, cool. All right, as long as we're on the same page there, we're not. I'm not a Karl Malone guy.
Being Louisiana,
we need to get him out of here. There's no reason in the world that he should have been getting as much publicity as he possibly could this last weekend. What I really need is Kevin Durant to come out and score another 10,000 points and get that clown out of here. There's no reason in the world he should be on the stage that we used to have him on. I know he was a good player, but God, he's a terrible person. Let's
So Karl Malone, you are out our show, sir. You get one mention, and that's a wrap for you. And we will not be talking about you anymore. But I think the main thing, though, was that I was very intrigued by, that I used to really appreciate, is the fact that once those guys got that out of the way, the skepticism about playing with him and against him, you saw those guys go out there and compete, in the All-Star game. And these guys are legends in NBA basketball. But what I saw last night, man, that wasn't it. Like, I literally fell asleep because I already knew what the game time was. I was like, I saw that Jason Tatum more than likely is going to be the MVP of the game. And it was like a layup line. And when you think about that, as a fan, they always talk about how the All-Star game is for fans, right? Does that entertain you? Is that entertaining to you? I guess that's my question is.
I think overall, I really enjoy the All-Star weekend. It's
a whole, right?
As a whole, right? Naturally, you've got so many different opportunities. I've always said that All-Star Saturday night is a Black national holiday. We are sitting down, locked in. You've got the dunk contest, the three-point contest, the skills competition. And after what has been a really kind of gross couple of years of the dunk contest, it's wild to say that Mac McClung and Black History Month out there in Utah put on an absolute show and brought back the dunk contest. I'm thankful for him. And personally, I figured he'd probably win because I had seen him dunk. I had seen him play at Texas Tech. I had seen him all over the internet, right? It's just crazy as a G League guy he did it. As for the actual All-Star game, it's crazy to think that it feels like they had made some changes to really make the game a little bit more interesting, right? Over the last couple of years, whether it was
on the surface,
having a draft or and this year, of course, having the person just picking guys out, which, by the way, Joker decided he's just not going to be the last pick, was hilarious. But I think that the problem is it feels like just like when they had to make the changes last time, where they had the target score and a chance for guys to try and get him to a certain number. It made sense the first couple of years, but it feels like something happened this year where something was just different, right? Nobody's played any kind of defense at all, which naturally they do play very little. It's an All-Star game. Nobody wants to get hurt, but it feels like in the past, at least I could even talk just the last year, it felt like it was more competitive because everybody wanted to kind of get that target
instead of just like, hey, go on to the lane.
Correct. So I think, honestly, there has to be something that the league has to do, whether it's maybe make it more monetarily, feasible for guys to really kind of be competing. And it kind of speaks to the dunk contest as well, man. That's your biggest thing on Saturday night. Mac McClung, who I think as a G League player in his two-way contract he just signed to play with the Philadelphia 76ers, I think it was worth like $102,000. He won $100,000 just for playing, which to Mac McClung is crazy money because that's his entire year's salary in one night. But shoot, if you're Ja Morant or Zion Williamson and you're worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, what I look like going out there risking my reputation for $100,000?
What's that?
For me, I'm going out there. Personally, give me a trampoline. I'm putting on a show. But if you're rich like they are, what in the world am I doing competing for $100,000?
Yeah,
so that's kind of the biggest problem here. It's just they haven't had the real commitment to making it make sense for guys to be out there really going after it. There was no kind of defense play last night. It was embarrassing.
Yeah, I think the thing that did it for me and it just really just put me over the top, I was like, all right, I'm done with this, is when I think with Jason Tatum, I think he threw the alley oop off the backboard, and then kind of LeBron kind of did one of these numbers, kind of ran over it, and I was just like, wait a minute, like
What's going on here?
I don't like okay, like you couldn't have done anything better than that. And I'm not saying LeBron should have been out there and tried to D him up or anything like that on the break, but it seemed like it was just nothing but fast breaks and everything. That just kind of it just bothered me a lot, man. When I
Yeah.
say that, like I don't know if I necessarily have a solution, but I think that wasn't it. Like that ain't it, man. Like I am so kind of like done, almost feeling like I have to watch All-Star games because, given the nature of business that I partake in on a daily basis, I feel like I have to watch it, and it is feeling more and more like a struggle each and every time the All-Star weekend rolls around. Now,
I will say this though, like I think that there is the aspect of the fact that they do a good job on the actual broadcast of giving us some stuff that we would never really get, right?
absolutely,
You've got players mic'd up playing during the actual game. I mean, you've got two different broadcasts with Jack Kenny and Chuck in them, and you've got the regular broadcast with shout out Candace Parker being the first ever woman to actually announce an All-Star game. Amazing news. I love
crazy.
Candace Parker on this side. We love
like,
Candace Parker on this
not
side.
Like Candace.
Come on now. So, I mean, there's so many good aspects to it, but like you said, the actual game wasn't where it needed to be this year. And that just speaks to what this kind of was, And I think that, like you said, there's not probably one solution, but I would say you offer people more money, they're going to play harder. That's just how I feel. They clearly don't care about these charities as much as people think.
Yeah, I think it's a matter. I think you're onto some guy. I think it's a matter of get maybe a sponsorship plus a cash prize. Like, hey, if you win the Bentley doggone slam dunk contest, how about you get a Bentley? You know what I'm saying? And you get a little cash prize to kind of NBA to pony up on the other side of that as well. So it's gonna have to be a combination of things. I feel like to get some motivation to say, hey, man, there's a lot of incentive for you to go ahead and jump in on this thing and do it. And yeah, Ja, how about this? Don't be trying to do all these fancy dunks in the doggone game. Do it in the slam dunk contest, dude. You already know everybody wants you to come out there and do it. But anyway, yeah, I think if something needs to be done, I just don't quite know if money is going to be the motivator. It's going to have to be a combination of things. But speaking of money being the motivator, how about this? You guys, know that the Falcons free agency is coming up. So there's a name that's been dropped consistently on the social. And people been asking me about how I feel about it. We're going to talk about that next. And he plays for the Bengals. I'll let you guys kind of figure that thing out for a little bit. But first, I got to tell you about FanDuel. FanDuel is the new sportsbook betting partner for Locked On. How about that? And for all the new customers, they got a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Who's doing that? Up to $1,000? Come on now, if you lose your pants on your first bet, they got you. They're going to take care of you. They make sure they got you. Now, the FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So no sweat. That's why I call it no sweat first bet. It's safe, it's secure, and they're going to make sure they give you a little money back if you lose your shorts on your first bet. So here, what you need to do, right? So don't miss your chance to get the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. They got the spread, the over-unders. They got each and everything that you need, right? I was looking at the numbers for the Falcons to go win the Super Bowl. It's plus 7,500 on FanDuel.
That's
are you gonna put some money on that?
I would
put about $5 on there, man. I can't even do the math on that right now. So
feels like you giving away $5, brother. I'm not gonna lie. Right. I don't know if I put that money down, but hey, it's a free bet though. It's no risk involved.
It's no risk involved. So go to FanDuel.com. It is, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, Reggie, I talked about how a lot of people have been clamoring and dropping this name on social media. And as far as Jesse Bates, he's the safety for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he more than likely is going to be a free agent this year because he played on the franchise tag for like what 12.9 million or so. I'm sorry, 11.9 million. Nice bit amount of change right there. So
$100,000 is not moving him. So he wouldn't be in the contest either.
That's probably not going to move him as either. Is when you actually think about it. So I think the first question I want to ask you is, it's not necessarily Jesse Bates. We'll get to that. But I think one of the things as far as when you look at what the Falcons defense was this year, do you feel like a Jesse Bates can enhance what we saw last year to the point where it'll be worth the type of money that he'll command in free agency.
Look, I'll tell you this. I think that regardless, you look at how last season kind of went,
Right.
and it was crazy because as soon as you had one player go down on that defensive side of the football, it was really a wrap. I mean, there was those weeks where we didn't see AJ Terrell, and it just felt like me or you could go out there and throw for 350 yards against the Falcons. And I mean,
Indeed.
and I feel like, unfortunately, because of that reason and because of that reality, yes, you've got some talent back there. It's just you need some more depth. So, I mean, in a guy like Jesse Bates, it'd be important to bring him in just off the strength that you need to be able to guard people. I mean, the league has changed so much, right? Especially you just look at how these quarterbacks are playing, how the rules are set up, these wide receivers and the way that these coaches are scheming people up. It's really almost impossible to guard anybody or stop anybody offensively, right? So you need to be able to have Pro Bowl level guys be able to play in that secondary. And I think that naturally, if this was a season where the Falcons didn't have a lot of cap space and they had to be really picky and choosy on what they wanted, then maybe, hey, you don't go after it. But I mean, you've got the second most cap space in the entire league ready to rock, right? You know, you need probably a pretty good safety to be able to kind of lock things down, right? And I think you'll still have money to be able to kind of make some other moves. You still got that top 10 pick that you could spend on. I don't know. I feel like you're a defensive line guy. You're trying to get somebody to rush the passer. I mean, it's,
no doubt,
there's so many things that they kind of need. And you feel pretty good about Richie Grant, but I mean, it's like, hey, if you could bring in a Pro Bowl level guy and have a second high level safety back there, and you know, you of course have AJ Terrell, and maybe you pick somebody up in the draft, maybe to help out as well in the secondary, you can feel pretty good about yourself. So personally, I say you go after it, but you don't seem to be a guy that wants that to go down.
Hey, here's the thing. Here's my thing, right? Like when you think about, you know, like safeties in the NFL today, like when you talk about how much they pass the ball, how much the ball is being, you know, passed, slang around all over the yard nowadays, and you would think there would be some guys that, you know, for me to kind of move the meter. So, because I come from the standpoint of I'm used to seeing guys like Ed Reed, Troy Polamalu, Steve Atwater, you know, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas. Those are the type of guys that I feel that are game-changing guys.
Yeah.
Guys that I wouldn't mind spending that type of money on, or at least having the conversation, right? When I think about Jesse Bates, I don't get that feeling. I don't get that feeling. I talked about it earlier. Like, he doesn't move me. He doesn't really move me because I've watched him in the playoffs. I watched him did up by Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce does that to a lot of safeties and corners and whoever is guarding him in the league.
Does not matter.
So my thing is, like, you can have that getting deal done once, but you got to get them back as well. And I never saw that from Jesse Bates. Now he was an All-Pro in 2020. I wholeheartedly get that. But when you guys think about this, right? When you think about their contract year and being in a contract year, knowing the team more than likely is not going to, you know, bring you back in, and then you know it has to be a reason why they're not bringing you back. Because if you were so that valuable, they'll go ahead and cut the check. And Cincinnati understands what they got coming up as far as on the offensive side of the football, and it just don't add up. So I think for me, if you're talking about a safety that was an All-Pro once, a team is letting them walk out the door, and a guy who made almost $12 million last year on a one-year contract, I already know what he got in his head. At least we starting at 11. We're starting off at $11 million, you know, as far as from a negotiation standpoint. And I just don't see Jesse as that type of guy to pay that type of money.
And I can understand that. And I think that you're right. It's all about kind of who's available and what's kind of an offer, right? And I think that's why it's so interesting, right? You're moving into this offseason with the Falcons where, like, they're not handcuffed, right? You got options, right? You really could, you know, mess around and pick him up, or you could say no and find another guy, or you could just do it all in free, like in the draft. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just have to actually be able to make some good picks here in the draft and maybe avoid the whole best on board situation, or really just pick for your actual needs. Like, this team probably should do at least once. Like, I just think there's so many other options. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that if you can get him, might as well roll with it. But if you don't feel too terrible about it, because at the end of the day, if you can't get the money or the number that you want for him, he's not like a guy that you're like, oh, I'm moving the needle for Jesse Bates. Like, thank God we got him. I don't know if he's that guy per se, but if you can get him, you can get him at a number that works for everybody involved. I think there's no reason to kind of go after him.
Yeah, I think, you know, where this defense is with Ryan Nielsen coming in as defensive coordinator and Jesse Bates, a guy who's an experienced guy who's well respected all around the league in the back end of the defense, coaching those guys up. I think that money can be better used in other places, right? And because we know that the Falcons need interior help to help grade Jared out, and they need edge guys as well. Because hey, guess what? I don't want to see Lorenzo Carter coming back as this legitimate starter for this team. No, I don't. And that's nothing to get. That's not a knock against Lorenzo Carter.
Feels like a shot at Lorenzo Carter, brother. I'm not gonna lie to you. That feels like you picked him out by himself. I thought Lorenzo was all right.
Yeah, he was fine. He was fine. But again, I'm not about guys who were reclamation projects coming in as starters. I want to see their reclamation project. Can I see on Ebiketie as a starter and getting starter reps and being out there more? Because I think he has something to bring to the table. So that's all I meant when I said that. Because Lorenzo Carter is a guy who's a free agent, and people got to figure the Falcons and Terry Fontenot and all those guys. They got to figure out whether or not they want to pull the trigger on bringing him back for another year. So I think that you can affect the game more by investing in your guys up front via free agency and in the draft, and it'll help out that secondary for those guys. Like people might not necessarily be sold on Jalen Hawkins. He'll look better if you get a Jalen Carter with the number 8 overall pick. He'll be better. Richie Grant will look better if you bring in a Deron Payne if he becomes a free agent for the Washington Commanders. So all those things kind of like that's what my mindset is. I'm all about getting that front end better so the back end can be better. Like, because if you get more pressure up front, those guys going to have more opportunity to make plays. And we've seen Jalen and Richie, when the ball is thrown their way, they'll catch it and try to make a play with it.
I think it's important that you do bring that side up, though. I mean, the attacking that up front first, and then it'll obviously, of course, make everything in the back end a little bit better. Because you look at just what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles this year, right? They had a fantastic front line, and I mean, Darius Slay is incredible, but maybe on that other side, it's a little bit more shaky. I mean, or a little, there's a little hold there at the Super Bowl. Yeah, the other guy they went after.
He had a solid season.
Overall, he had a solid season. But I mean, you look at guys like Deebo Samuel, who he's a guy, a pretty good guy in this league, right? He just talked about the fact that on that defense, their secondary looks a lot better because of who they have up front, because they're able to get to the passer. Now, mind you, I mean, if you really look at who they played against this year, which is maybe why they were good. Don't get me wrong, but they were going up against some B+ quarterbacks, Daniel Jones 6 times a year. I mean,
but you're grading on the curve too.
I mean, there has to be a little bit of that as well. You know what I mean? And so, like, I think there's aspects to both of it, right? So that's the thing. We're in a really good situation if you're the Falcons, right, where you really can't get anything wrong. I think as long as if they go into it with a plan, like if you go get Jesse Bates, like, all right, fine. But you also probably need to actually use that number 8 pick on somebody up front, right? Or maybe come off that edge, right? Like you said, if you get a Jalen Carter, that would be fantastic for multiple reasons. Georgia guy here in town, people know how good he is. If you can get him,
he's amazing.
He's feeling real good about himself, right? He's feeling real good about himself. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where you want to go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this offseason is very – it's going to be very interesting for Terry Fontenot. I've always said it's probably going to be the most important offseason for this regime and Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, that is, because, like I said, they have the second most amount of salary cap behind the Chicago Bears, and they have another top 10 pick, and we're going to find out where the investment is going to lie once March rolls around and this new league year comes in and they start making decisions, and we'll see how this roster starts to shake out. Now, Reggie. Now, for me, man, I've been on my little workout routine, right? I've been trying to figure out what's going on, trying to get my life together, man. I've been working it out, getting it going. You know what's helped me out? How about this? Built Bar. Because Built Bar, as we go through the holidays, start everybody trying to get back right. Everybody trying to get in the weight room and get in the gym and everything. And it's all crowded and stuff. And I'm waiting for those people to fall off the map so I can get my workout on and not have to worry about so many people around me and taking up all the – I'm getting a little personal. But anyway, Built Bar is the place where you need to go because it is not only a healthy option, it actually tastes good because it's 100% real chocolate. How about that? How can you ask for any more than that? And when you're talking about flavors, man, let me tell you something. Reggie, they got the churro flavor. Ooh, when I tell you, it is absolutely amazing. I've eaten churro Built Bars on this show live, man, because they're just that good. And you're talking about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein, man. Just exactly what you need when you're talking about doing. Now, for all the people who've been ordering from built.com, that's cool. But all the people who's trying to go into a storefront, if you're old school, you want to get into the store, they are in Walmart and Sam's Club. They are right there for you. So if you want to go to built.com and continue to order your boxes of Built Bars, that's cool. But go to Walmart and Sam's Club. They got all the big boy boxes right there waiting just for you. But Reggie, this is it for the culture. It is the intersection between sports, entertainment, and the culture. Sometimes whatever the hell we want to talk about. It's just how we get down on this show. Today is no different. How about this? I'm putting you on the hot seat, man.
All right.
So now, for all y'all who don't know, Reggie is my guy. He works over there at 11 Alive. So I want to get to know Reggie a little bit more as we go through these couple of days of show filling in for Tenitra. So I'm going to start off with this one, man. What is your favorite sports moment ever?
Favorite sports moment ever? Man, ever. Wow. Like where I experienced it in real life or just saw it?
Either one.
It's
your choice.
I think maybe, and people always see me on TV or like on social media making jokes about it, but it is true. I went to LSU. I'm a big LSU guy. And naturally, before I got here to Atlanta, I got to work at the ABC station in Baton Rouge. So I covered that LSU 2019 team that just ran through everybody on the way to the national championship. And I think two of my maybe biggest moments of my career came from that season, right? I mean, it was my first time in Atlanta was coming into town for that SEC championship game where they put Georgia, just got them all the way out of here because Joe Burrow and them just were unbelievable. That was the first time in Atlanta. I was like, man, this would be a great city to work in. Maybe one day. And a year and a half later, I was here. So look, that might have been it, or just being in New Orleans when they won the national championship that year. I mean, that was like nothing I had ever seen. But yeah, those are probably top two of my maybe favorite moments I've ever experienced as a sports fan.
Absolutely. All right, now this one is a little personal, not too personal, but hopefully it's not too personal. Now, have your parents ever embarrassed you in public? If so, what happened?
Man, I got to think about it because thankfully my parents be pretty good, right? They kind of stay where they kind of stay where they kind of need to be at. You know what I mean? And personally, maybe I'm in the minority here. I think my parents are actually pretty cool. Like I actually really enjoy being around my parents. So they don't really embarrass me. I got to really think about that, man. Because it'll usually be something like, man, I can't even think of anything off the top of my head. Which honestly is probably a good thing, right?
That's a good thing. Yeah, if it's taking that long, you've been on this earth for, I guess, 20 plus years. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't think of anything, man. You're doing good, my brother.
Hey, my parents are gonna be really excited about that.
Yes,
Mom and Dad, you're welcome. I couldn't think of anything, which means you guys have done a good job. So thank you.
Absolutely. Now, this is the last one before we get out of here. Now, Jalen Rose was on social media talking about dudes should be paying for. See, I love it. I love this reaction. Talking about how dudes should be willing to pay $100. I was about to say $100. That's slang. $100 for a haircut. Now, Reggie Chatman, 11 Live sports anchor, reporter. Would you be willing to pay $100 for a haircut?
Okay, but here's the deal. No.
I'm about to say, yeah. I already knew the answer was no.
Just
to start. Why? I love it.
Right? The only way I'm paying $100 is if this man comes to my house. If I get a facial with it, I better get you better be cutting with the scissors from God himself. This line better be crisper than it's ever been, and it must also last longer than any other haircut I've ever got. There's no way I'm spending $100 for a haircut that's going to only last me a week and a half that I really feel good about it, right?
Come on, man.
You know what I mean? And here's the deal. I got to make a shout out because my buddy Max McGee, he's a sports anchor on Sports Center at ESPN, right? And he got the hookup, and he now goes to the same barbershop as Jalen Rose. And so when Jalen came out with this take, he's like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? I agree. The guy's great. Spend $100. And I was like, Max, if you don't get all the way out of here with that nonsense, who do you think you are?
Get out of here with this
spending $100 for a haircut. There's no reason for that, right? I think, unfortunately, you come to a city like Atlanta. When I first moved here, I asked my cousin who lived out here. I was like, hey, man, just need a haircut. Where can I go? He's like, and his first question to me was, what is your budget? And I couldn't understand
Oh yeah.
Why? I just need a haircut.
In Atlanta?
What do you mean my budget is?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yes, dude. So here's the thing, man. So first off, I think it's ridiculous that Jalen is talking about $100 for a doggone haircut being a normal
thing. How much did Jalen make?
7 figures, easily.
You played in the NBA.
You start there. Yeah, come on. You can start right there. But here's the thing, though. With Jalen, here's what he doesn't want to admit to. And I'm real particular about how I get my haircut. Right now, it took me a while to kind of get settled in because the barbershop that I grew up going to, they got a little uppity on me. So I had to kind of go ahead and relieve myself of their duties, and that I was paying to them. So here's the thing with Jalen though. Like he got the whole thing where some people call it Beijing, some people call it the Yao Ming. I call it shoe polish.
Talk about
it. When you talk about that, right? And we don't know what type of bald spots Jalen may have because he's a little up there in age. And we know that hairline is absolutely perfect. So, yeah, if you get all that extra, if a dude got to have a doggone stencil on your face, yeah, you should be paying close to $100. I'm not saying you should, you know what I mean? But if you getting all that done, and I'm sure he got the guy probably coming to his crib to doggone cut his hair as well. So, if all those things factors are coming into play for you, Jalen, keep paying that hundo, and I won't. So I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna go to my barber where he cuts hair, and he's my family member as well. So I'm gonna pay him a nice. He ain't gonna charge me that much, but I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna tip him, make sure I bring it up to the 2023 standards. Yep. And I'm gonna keep it moving, Jack.
I'll be all right because I'll be right back there in a week and a half. I'm not spending $100. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it, brother.
Yeah. Jalen, man, pound sand and kick rocks for all that.
Kick rocks, brother. Come back to earth with the rest of us. Touch some grass, man. You're not going to be spending $100 on no cut.
Nah, man.
Just because you got to get it sprayed in. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't need all that. Yeah.
I don't need all that.
Give me the little razor.
With a hairline, you can get that razor right there. We're good to go.
We're good to go, man. We're good to go. And we thank you guys for rocking with ATL Day Ones today. We thank Reggie for sitting in. He'll be back tomorrow to kick it with us as well. And, we thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen today. How about this? You make Locked On Sports Today your second listen of the day. They have each and everything for you. They have the take of the day, where people may say and do any and everything, all the national sports news, they got you covered. And you can find it wherever you find this podcast. And last but not least, before we get out of here, Reggie, I always ask the people, or tell the people, to make sure that they share love, show love, and most importantly, spread love.
You